On today's episode of Locked On Canadiens, it is a preseason disaster in Montreal.
You're Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to episode 1150 of Locked On Canadiens. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day and for subscribing on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast doing that supports the show and ensures you don't miss an episode. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. I am Ian Boisvert, also known as Maybe It's Ian. I'm joined by the incomparable Laura Saba, also known as the Active Stick. Laura, I feel like I know the answer to this question, and if you can hear it in my voice, we're a little down today, but how are we doing today?
So that was obviously not an ideal weekend for the Montreal Canadiens. We still don't have news, and in the absence of news, I think we can still remain a little bit hopeful, but that game was quite a disaster, and I know we have to talk about it, and we are going to talk about it, but it was entirely preventable, and so for that reason, I'm quite angry.
Yep. No, same. Like you mentioned, we have a lot to talk about on today's episode, unfortunately, because none of it seems particularly good. We'll break down the injuries to both Patrik Laine and David Reinbacher. We'll talk about the response from Arber Xhekaj, and we'll talk about who probably needs to step up in the absence of both of those players long-term, should they miss a significant amount of time. Let's start with, how the game started. The first 4 minutes and 30 some odd seconds of the game, and the Canadiens were down 2 players. Let's start with David Reinbacher. He goes down. He takes a fairly, benign hit. Didn't seem like much. He then could not put any weight on his left leg, went down the tunnel. We did not see him again. Just your general thoughts around that incident for the Montreal Canadiens.
So for that one, I don't think, it felt more like the freak injuries that we were seeing with the Canadiens last year. That's the sense I got. It was very concerning to me that he couldn't put weight on it. But you never know. It could be, it could be something that in the moment it felt much worse than it is. That's my hope. But I mean, these are hockey players. They're tough. So it didn't seem too promising. And for me, I think the person or the team or whatever that loses the most is David Reinbacher himself, because he's expected to play in Laval. He can be replaced in Laval. There are players that will be, that can play defense in Laval, but it's his development that's going to take a hit for however many months that he's out. Hopefully it won't be too many. Could be an entire season, as, some of the more pessimistic projections are saying. But, it's not a matter of replacing Reinbacher. It's a matter of how do you replace what he's lost when he comes back in terms of his learning and his development. That to me, with the David Reinbacher thing, I'm sure it's very frustrating for the Canadiens, but I think, at this point, we talked about how there's way too many defensemen vying for too few spots. So this way, I think another person is going to have to step up in Laval, but it's really his development that hurts more than anything.
Yeah,
else.
absolutely. Yeah, I feel the same way. He's not even 20 yet. He'll be 20 at the end of October. And, it's a massive hit to his development should he miss significant time. I think it's important to note Patrick Laine from RDS reported that both Patrik Laine and David Reinbacher left the Bell Center on crutches with articulated braces on their knees. So we're looking at potentially very similar injuries to both players, but you're bang on there about, the biggest loss in this respect being David Reinbacher and his development. We were really looking forward to seeing him come into his own and, in North American professional ice hockey, and he won't get a chance to do that at least right away. Again, like you said, we're keeping ourselves as optimistic as we can, considering, they haven't released anything yet. Usually with these knee injuries, the swelling is too difficult to, make any conclusions from. So once the swelling goes down, they'll probably have their MRIs and, we'll know more at that point. But shifting gears to Patrik Laine, he's skating in on a power play zone entry. Cedrick Pare, a journeyman AHL defenseman, is holding the blue line and accidentally on purpose, or some combination of all three of those things. Sticks out his knee and hits Patrik Laine on his knee. The screenshot is gruesome. It looks bad. You know, I just bought a Patty Laine jersey last week. It has yet to be delivered. So, you know, it's just, I think the thing about this particular injury that bugs me the most, I'm not going to talk about Pare as much as I want to. I think we got all of that out of our systems on Saturday night. The part about it that is going to continue to haunt me for some time is that Laine represented an opportunity for this team to take a step forward. And with him being removed from the lineup, look at the lineup. Other than Kirby Dach, it's the same that played last year. So unless a lot of those guys take massive steps forward on their own, we're potentially looking at a very similar result to last year. And I hate saying that before the regular season has even begun, because we were so high on this team. You know, we were so high on the idea that Patty Laine could come into Montreal and be an impact player. And again, we still don't know. You guys might know by the time you're listening to this on Monday. The Canadiens might put out a 7 a.m. press release, and you guys will know, you know, and make all of this either sound, you know, like we're foretelling prophecy or look very silly. And I hope it's the latter. I hope we look like morons.
I know.
I will take the L gladly. But I'm very emotional about it. He's I've been very pro Patty Laine since even before the Canadiens got him. It's a guy who didn't need to take another shot like this, and it's a guy who's being dealt yet another shot like this. I haven't felt this way after a Canadiens game in a very long time. Maybe the Dach game, but this somehow feels worse.
I think with the Dach, the difference was the Canadiens weren't expected to take a step forward. We were just like, whatever happens this year, we're happy with it, right? This year, it's very different. It's also ironic because I was on a season preview roundtable that is dropping on the same day that you guys hear this. Recorded it 2 weeks ago, and it was all about optimism in Montreal. And this particular episode is the opposite. For me, it's two things. It's if it's something that's relatively minor, which hopefully it is, you never know. It still could take 8 to 10 weeks for him to come back. But I'm worried that it's longer than that, not just for the Canadiens, but for Patrik Laine himself. You know, he talked last year so much about a lot of his mental health issues were caused by the fact that he couldn't play.
Yeah.
Or he couldn't play at the regular, you know, at his potential and all of that. Like, and I think he worked so hard in the off season to get back to game shape. And you could see it. Like, we saw those videos. He looked so optimistic coming into this year. And for me, that is the part that worries me a little bit, is just for him, you know, like, it's going to suck. It's going to suck for us for no matter what, unless he comes back really soon. And again, like Ian said, I hope that, like, you know, tomorrow morning while you're listening to this, you're thinking those morons.
Yeah.
They were chicken littling this whole thing, but I don't think we're alone in that right now. I really hope that he does have a chance to get better and come back as soon as possible, just for his future, just for his sanity, his mental health. And with the Canadiens, I know we're going to talk about this a little bit later, does leave a huge hole. But I know, you know, you said we don't want to relitigate it. I just want to just say one thing. If you're a career journeyman and you're trying to get the attention of your coaches and the front office on a team where there is so much skill that you're not even the period at the end of a sentence, like, whatever you do is not going to catch attention. It's not. You're not going to get a spot in the lineup because you did this. In fact, you're going to be a Marley for the entire rest of this season. If I see the Toronto Maple Leafs call you up, it's not going to be because of that. It's going to be because like 50 other players got injured, and that's why they're calling you up, right? It's not going to be because you took out an important Montreal Canadien. And there are a lot of people that were saying, oh, it's under Berube, the mentality's changed. No, career NHLers do this every year. They do this every year. They get called up for one game in the regular season and they try and kill somebody. They get played in the preseason and they try and kill multiple people. So, you know, we want to talk about how, like, the Leafs fans say we're exaggerating, saying he did it on purpose or not. Like, if he wasn't trying to knee him on purpose, he was trying to trip him. So like, like at some point you kind of have to understand that if you suck, you should just know your place and not try to do something like this. Because now what did you do? You got your family and friends at the Bell Center harassed and everybody hates you.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought, PK Subban was at the game, and he, we'll move on after this, but he posted a video on Sunday basically saying like the respect in the game is important, and Cedrick Pare did not have a ton of respect for the game in that moment. He didn't respect Patrik Laine. We'll talk about the code a little bit in the second segment of the show because I think it's an interesting discussion to be had, but he didn't answer the bell. We can talk about whether or not he needs to, but we'll get into that in the second segment and all that goes along with Arber Xhekaj's response. But we're going to get into that in just a moment. I love being in the middle of the action, whether that's taking in a concert or enjoying a night at the ballpark. It's just more fun being there. I have my eye on a few NHL games this year that I need to get to, and the place I can go to get the best deal for my tickets is Gametime. We're big fans of Gametime here, thanks to their all-in pricing. That's a setting in the app that you can toggle on, so Gametime tells you exactly how much you'll be paying to get in. No hidden fees. Plus, with their seat views, you know what kind of action you'll be able to see. And with their lowest price guarantee, you'll know exactly the best deal for your tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It's game time. All right, we are back. But before we move on, I want to thank you for making Locked On Canadiens your first listen of the day. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On NHL podcast. Locked On NHL provides you with a national perspective on all things NHL each and every day, with national experts and local insight on every team in the league. I imagine this incident will make their schedule this week, so you may want to tune in to get another person's perspective. They're available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. All right, so Pare's next shift after kneeing Patrik Laine. Arber Xhekaj is out there. Arber Xhekaj finds him and grabs him by the collar and pulls him and then spins him around and then decides to throw some glove-on punches before he's, forcibly removed from Pare. No damage was done. It was, I think, as far as these incidents go, rather benign. I didn't think that it was... Look, the way Leaf fans are talking about this, like the comparisons to the Bertuzzi-Moore incident are delusional. Like to think that there's any kind of justification for that comparison is like you're just living in a fantasy land. That's not what happened here. Cedrick Pare got up and played the rest of that game, and in the post-game press conferences, he had a big smile on his face as he was talking about this whole incident. This was not some assault-like attack on a player. We all need to get over ourselves. But I think the conversation I kind of want to have here is regarding the code that Cedrick Pare is, kind of needed to fight in that situation. I do not agree with the code. I do not think that that's a thing that should be a thing. However, that's not the reality we live in. The reality we live in is one where Arber Xhekaj is on the ice to correct people for crossing the code. We can argue the merits of that, but we cannot argue what exists in reality, and that is what exists in front of us. So, and I'm rambling a little bit here. I want to make one more point, and then I'm going to throw it to Laura for your reaction as well. But I find it incredibly rich to be coming from a fan base who, when John Tavares fell face first into Corey Perry's knee, Corey Perry had to fight Nick Foligno because that's the code. You took out our captain. Even though it was a complete accident and he skated face first into your knee, it's your fault. We need to fight you. I find it incredibly rich that when an Ottawa Senator scores an empty net goal with a slap shot, you guys decide that it's okay for Morgan Rielly to cross-check him in the neck because, well, you just can't do that. That justifies our response. But for Arber Xhekaj to grab a guy, keep his gloves on the entire time, not use a weapon, just start punching, barely land any punches, and it's somehow the worst thing that's ever happened in hockey. It's delusional to the point of we just need to dismiss it and move on. And that's the last I'm going to say of that, because we had to put off recording because Saturday night we were too emotional to get behind the microphone. And I can feel my heart rate going up. So Laura, I have to have you talk now before I get us both kicked off the air.
All right. So here's where I stand on this, is that Arber Xhekaj would not have needed to do that if the officials had control of the game. It was so early that they lost control of the game. And I think the fact that they claimed later they didn't see it, I don't know if that's true. Whatever it was, at the end of the day, like if Cedrick Pare had been punished in some way, then Arber Xhekaj would not have felt the need, or it would not have been imperative for him to do that. You know what I mean? Like, and I think, you're talking about the code. I think if the game had been under control, if Pare was in the penalty box, like, first of all, Arber Xhekaj would not have been able to find him. Second of all, it wouldn't have felt like it needed to be evened out, right? Like, that's the thing. Like Arber Xhekaj was like trying to restore balance by doing that. Now, I do think, and I know this is going to get some people upset with me, is I do think that he deserved what he got in terms of the punishment. And I did think that potentially he should have been suspended a game.
Completely agree with you. I thought it would be multiple games.
Yeah. So, I mean, the fact that it was a fine, like the Canadiens got really lucky, incredibly lucky. But I have another thing to say about this. But at the end of the day, like if that game had been officiated correctly, we wouldn't have seen this. And I do have to say also, like Cedrick Pare kept talking about how he didn't see Arber Xhekaj coming. We all have eyes. It was replayed a million times. We saw you actively running away from him and looking back at him and continuing to turtle. Like, I don't know who these people think they're kidding. It's like a cowardly player, and then the fan base is just defending it, and they're so indignant. Like, most of them probably couldn't even name Cedrick Pare before this. Like, he was not even a Marley before. He was like, I think with the Colorado system or so. I don't even remember where he was. Who cares? But all of this is to say is that, this guy that like isn't even a blip on your team's radar, and now all of a sudden you're like indignant that like he ran away from Arber Xhekaj, and then Xhekaj didn't let him get away with that. Like, and again, like those were some not that strong punches. Like I've seen Arber Xhekaj drop people, and that's not what that was, right? Like he was just trying to make sure that Cedrick Pare got told. And so at the end of the day, like I don't think he should have chased a guy down the ice and tried to beat him up. Like I don't think anyone should ever do that. Sure. But I completely understand why he did that. And that's why I was like, yes, but also get suspended, right? Like as a Montreal Canadiens fan, like Cedrick Pare deserved some punishment. Unfortunately, the player had to do it himself because the league didn't. But then at the same time, like you can't do that. So you should get punished for that too. So a fine is kind of laughable. But also, like, who are you kidding by saying I didn't see him coming in the postgame? Everyone can see what happened. Like, we can all see what happened. We're not stupid, right? You're stupid. But also, like, there are Leafs fans today being like, oh my God, George Parros and like his former team and his former blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you guys are all stupid. Like, George Parros.
He played 22 more games with the Montreal Canadiens than you and I combined. Like, this is not... They're acting like Jean Beliveau is in charge of the player safety department. Like it's the level of delusion is unbelievable.
It's like mind blowing.
Imagine bending yourself into a pretzel to defend Cedrick Pare. Save your breath for game 4 when Ryan Reeves goes out there and dummies a guy for no reason, right? Like I don't understand the pearl clutching over Cedrick Pare, a guy who 98% of that franchise had not even known before this game started.
Literally, you had never heard of this guy before before this game at all. Before he kneed, actually, you could have watched this entire game and not known who he was if he didn't knee Patrik Laine. So he did get people's attention there. He did get his goal, but like to me, like when you put a former enforcer in charge of player safety, you know he's going to be soft towards other enforcers. It doesn't have anything to do with the fact that Arber Xhekaj plays for the Montreal Canadiens, or if he hates the Leafs. Nobody hates the Leafs, right? Just like everybody just get over yourself. Like
that's
like, the Leafs doesn't hate the Leafs. Like it's just
another level of delusion that we're not going to convince people of. They're not listening to this. We're talking to ourselves. You know what I mean? Like it's just exactly. We're yelling into the void. Everybody here agrees. Like I don't understand. Like there's no other way around it. It was just a disaster of an evening. But to your point, and to the point I made earlier about the code, two things can exist at the same time. The code can exist at the same time. We can understand that it is to be adhered to on the ice. And we can also believe that it's complete garbage and these players should get in trouble when they try to enforce it. Yeah. I don't see a contradiction in that because I'm not, part of either part of these things. I'm observing this as a third party, right? So, that is what it is, right? We'll move on because we want to get back to, how this impacts the rest of training camp for the Montreal Canadiens. And more directly, who steps up in the absences of both Patrik Laine and David Reinbacher. We're going to get into all of that in just a minute. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Maybe you like the Titans at +110 or the Lions at -180 in primetime on Monday night. FanDuel is the place to get in on the action. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed when you place your first $5 bets. I'll say that again. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed when you place your first bet. That's FanDuel.com. All right, we are back. We're going to try to bring this back to a more constructive conversation. Instead of reactive, we're going to be proactive and start to pick apart what the Canadiens are going to need to do to move on from these injuries should they be long-term. Let's start with David Reinbacher because I think it's honestly a shorter conversation. He's, we've penciled him in Laval for a long time now. Who do you think needs to step up in Laval to sort of fill in that absence?
So it's interesting because I don't think that there are any other players like him in Laval, right? There aren't any other players that like have that level of talent, but that kind of that specific skill set. I'm not going to say range of skill set because I feel like there's a lot more range to, let's say, Logan Maillout's game, right? But Adam Engstrom is there now, right? So there's a possibility that this is an opportunity for him. Logan Maillout, right now, if they call up Lane Hudson first, or if he starts the season in Montreal and he stays here for a while, it's a while before Logan Maillout cracks that lineup, right? Justin Barron, I don't think he's going to make the NHL team. I know he has to go on waivers. I know he might get claimed on waivers. I don't think that I don't see Montreal for him this year unless the Canadiens really, really don't want to lose him in waivers. I also don't necessarily see, I don't see him clearing waivers, but at the same time, like I don't see them playing him here. So if by some miracle he does clear waivers, I feel that he's probably the person who's going to eat up those minutes. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think maybe it's not the guy who needs to step up because David Reinbacher's sort of impact in Laval has yet to be seen. What he projects as an NHL or an AHL, production this year. But to your point, the guys with the most to gain here are Logan Maillout, who's going to be played a ton of minutes in all kinds of situations, and Adam Engstrom, who probably gets a little bit of a step up, in his ice time in his absence. So, yeah, I agree with both those guys. Hopefully, like we've said, hopefully it's not an extended absence for these guys, but should it be, it's an excellent opportunity for Logan Maillout to come into his own yet again in the AHL. He had a great rookie season. Let's see if he can follow it up. It also makes call-ups a little weird, right? Because okay, you had David Reinbacher and Logan Maillout in the AHL. Let's say someone gets hurt on defense in Montreal. Now you can call up Maillout, but now you don't have Reinbacher there, right? So it sort of creates another situation for Laval down the line. Patty Laine, no one's going to replace what he potentially could have brought this team, both, in the terms of production and, enthusiasm and optimism for the season. But if you had to pick a few guys who need to, step up their game in order to keep the team afloat who stands out to you?
I don't say he needs to step up. I would say that he needs to build on existing play, and I think the most logical answer is Joshua Roy. I know the more likely scenario is that Josh Anderson gets moved up there, and he absolutely needs to step up in that scenario if that happens to him. But I do think that for me, it's a no-brainer. You play Joshua Roy there, he gets those minutes. He improves his game. He's given us nothing to worry about thus far. And so it's not necessarily a matter of stepping up. It's a matter of continuing to grow in the way that he has in the past few years. That's who I would put there. But knowing Marty, he's probably going to give Josh Anderson another chance there, and I need to see better from him.
Yeah, not even, just saying knowing Marty, like knowing what we saw at the end of that game. It was Josh Anderson. And, you mentioned him, and I let out a deep, heavy sigh because I don't get it. I don't think that that's going to be the right decision. We've seen it. We've seen Anderson have to play in that top 6 role, and he's not playable in it. It's just, I hate to start this off by just giving a player an automatic no, but that's sort of where I'm at, is just, we've seen it.
Yeah. Well, we had a mailbag. I want to pull up our mailbag. It was not a question. It was kind of like a wager, I guess. All right. Ante up. This is our friend Jordan Roberts. To change Anderson's luck on the ice, I'm challenging his biggest doubter. Looking at you, Laura. If Anderson scores 25 goals this year, I challenge you to do a Hot Ones challenge, and I will make a $100 donation to the Montreal Children's Hospital. Go Habs, go. All right. So here's where I'm at with this. I will do the Hot Ones if Josh Anderson scores 25 goals. I will 100% do the Hot Ones. We'll do a live show. Everybody will laugh at me. We laughed so much at Scott. He's done a few of those. I'll definitely do that at the end of the season or when he hits 25 goals. Maybe it's January. Maybe I do a Hot Ones in January. Let's all pray for that, everybody. But I will also donate $100 to the Montreal Children's Hospital. And I will do that whether or not he scores 25 goals.
Yeah.
But also
I will throw my hat in that ring as well. I will match that donation. So we'll make some good out of this. I won't be doing the Hot Ones this time, not because I am opposed to it, but because if there's 2 of us eating hot wings on an audio medium, it's going to be incredibly terrible podcasting to just hear hot breathing for 30 minutes. So I will get mine at another time, but yeah. I look, like you said, maybe he hits it by January and we all look really silly. Yeah. My thought on that is if he hits it by January, he's not a Montreal Canadian by November. Like they're finding a way to move him out of town.
As soon as he starts scoring those goals.
As soon as that stock is on the way up, he's on the way out. That's how I see that.
Right.
I agree on both those guys. I also think this is an opportunity for Kirby Dach. Last year we had no Laine because he wasn't here and no Dach. Now we have no Laine, but we do have Dach. We need to see it.
Alex Newhook can maybe make some magic, and then it doesn't matter who they play on that line.
Well, and maybe it's an opportunity for Oliver Kapanen, who we all sat here and we're trying to crunch the numbers on figuring out a way he can stay in this lineup. Grimly, Patrik Laine injury is what would put him in the lineup.
Exactly, yes.
It does suck, but it's making the best of a bad situation. Let's get Oliver Kapanen in here and see if he can make an NHL role for himself. If not, it's back to Sweden to finish out his contract there. But that's sort of where I'm at. I'm trying to find, the positive pieces to cling on to. And, it's not super easy to do that all the time. So I think we'll leave that there. We do want to jump into our trivia. We have an answer and another question. So I'll read last episode's question and you guys can take a moment to guess for yourselves. Name the player that followed this path: Boston, Toronto, Pittsburgh, Montreal, Nashville, Philadelphia. Laura, who's our guy?
Hal Gill.
It is.
I actually had to edit this because I said it when you were reading it and we were recording. I said it on the recording. I knew it right away. I was like, it's Hal Gill.
Yeah.
But yes, I'm so excited when I get these right.
Yeah, no, it's fun. All right, so we've got 2 games against Ottawa this week. Everybody do sage circles in your living room, something that will help us avoid whatever the heck happened on Saturday night.
Climb the steps of the Montreal Oratory, everybody.
Yeah, everybody do it. So name this player to follow in that path: Boston, Pittsburgh, New York Islanders, LA, Ottawa, Chicago, Vancouver, Montreal. That's a long one, so I'll read it again. Boston, Pittsburgh, New York Islanders, LA, Ottawa, Chicago, Vancouver, Montreal. I thought that was a pretty tough one. He's a guy I remember pretty vividly, but we will see if everybody else agrees. That's going to do it for us on this episode of Locked On Canadiens. Thanks so much for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, head over to Locked On NHL to see what else is going on around the league. As a reminder, we are free and available everywhere you get your podcasts and YouTube, so be sure to subscribe to Locked On Canadiens so you don't miss an episode. You can follow this show on Twitter at @LO_Canadiens or email us at lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com. We're also on Instagram at LockedOnCanadiens. You can find Laura at The Active Stick. You can find me at Maybe It's Ian. Thanks for tuning in. We will see you next time.